And then ask yourself, what's no longer working? What's no longer working for me? Maybe it could be as simple as too much wine in the middle of the week, or it's not getting outside, or for me, it was like only reading personal development books. That's no longer giving me joy. So ask yourself what's no longer working and what needs to change and what will happen if I do make this change. And then most powerfully is what will happen if I don't.
Let's reimagine mom life together. Mama Has Goals is your hub for relatable support and helpful resources that help you fuel yourself alongside motherhood. Your identity is bigger than mom, and whatever your goals are, together we're making them a reality. Mamas, I love basically every guest we bring on this podcast, but sometimes I get off an episode and I'm like, gosh, that was so good. There were so many good takeaways. And this is definitely one of those episodes. We talk about some business stuff, but we also talk about how it all relates to life. And we talk about the different seasons of accomplishing our goals, motherhood, being a single mom, being supported in your business and in your life, when to take action, what's a needle mover in your life and in your business, how you can fail to success, and so much more. Marion Wagner is an income growth strategist for online service-based entrepreneurs. And in her career, Marion has specialized in helping online entrepreneurs create six-figure game plans without a large following on social media. In the online space, there's a lot of opportunities to improve or create new businesses. And Marion teaches a combination of psychological and strategic approach to transform her clients' approach towards organic lead generation and income growth. She's the creator of the Lead System and hosts the Small Audience Big Income podcast. She lives in Denver, Colorado with her husband and two children, 11-year-old son and 15-month-old daughter, and her two high maintenance but equally important dogs. We talk through so much good stuff in this episode and how she's navigated growing not one successful business, but three. Her first starting as a single mom to her now 11-year-old son, how she's now moved into different online opportunities and met her soulmate, and really how you can navigate your goals and the things you want to achieve regardless of what season you're in. We talk about the real, what complaining is versus being able to vent, move forward, and just life. So grab whatever you need to get through this episode, whether that's headphones, a beverage, a spot to sit, or plug it in with whatever you're doing, and dive in, because you will definitely see yourself in different parts of this conversation. And this was so good. Marion, I am so excited to have you here with us today. I have so many different things that I want to talk to you about and dive into. I am in this season of motherhood that's like right in the middle of where you're at. I have a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and then I'm pregnant with our third. And you have your 11-year-old and your 1-year-old. And so you're on the bookends of, you're like, yep, been there and also in it also at the same time. And I think that is such a fun place to be, because I'm curious, are you feeling like I've already been here before and I know what I'm doing, or is it all new again?
I feel like, oh my gosh, I think I blocked this out. I don't remember this. No, it does feel like I am starting over completely and experiencing it, but also just because of the age difference. Back then I was 35, now I'm 45, and I have a different energy around it where I'm like, oh, she's crying. That means she's alive. All right, we're winning right now. Versus back then, I think I was like, oh my gosh, I got to help him stop crying. And now it's just a different.
Yeah, you're in a different place.
Yeah.
And you're in a different place personally too, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. You were a business owner when you had your son also, and you were growing an online business, but now you have a supportive husband to help you along the way. You've grown multiple businesses. You've seen success in so many different ways. Where do you feel like you're at just as a person caring for yourself and like what your day-to-day looks like?
Yes, I have been growing online businesses now for 14 years. I was a school psychologist beforehand. So I feel like back when I was a single mom too, I should share that, back with Cooper, that's my son. And it was almost like, Tony Robbins says you either have to be feeling inspiration or desperation.
Mm-hmm.
I felt both of those things very strongly early on in my online career, where it was not an option for me to stay up to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night when my son went to bed. It was staying up late, doing super early morning meetings before he would wake up, and doing what needed to be done, but I also felt such a sense of joy and fulfillment because it was something that I was building that was my own. And
Mhm.
it allowed me to actually be home with him. Today, I definitely feel the more inspiration piece. And in terms of self-care and just going on long walks with my
Mhm.
1-year-old and my dogs and working out and reading books that have nothing to do with business, I think it sounds so, I don't know if it sounds lame, but I used to not allow myself to read mystery books or
Yeah.
fiction books because it wasn't productive. And when you have that ambition chip in you, we sometimes think that it's trivial or we're cheating or we're not living up to our potential if we're going to, you know, listen or read 50 Shades of Grey and things are going to fall apart. And now I just don't. I feel like the rest is part of the work, really.
And I totally agree with you. When I have been in different seasons of my life and business and even just my career and goals, there's that hustle season. And then there's the season of being like, okay, I'm going to bring in other parts of me. Or what am I even working so hard for if I can't enjoy it? But I will tell you, even still being in the beginning stages of my business, when I hear people that are already there, if you will, air quotes, I do have this kind of gut reaction of like, well, yeah, you can do that now because you've built it. So what would you tell like someone that's getting started or going to your past self? Is it okay to still find that couple hours a week where you're checking out when you're in the very beginning hustle mode stages? Or do you really need to put your head down for a season? Like, how do you know when you're hustling enough and resting enough?
I have never been asked that question. I feel like maybe I'm a little bit of a masochist because I love starting new businesses and building something from nothing. And that's just what I've done. This is my third, and I'm sure there'll be more. But I feel as though you inherently, especially women, we know inherently when it's going to be a stretch season and when it's going to be a little bit more of a take a deep breath, be present, recalibrate. When we start feeling anxiety taking the wheel, when we start feeling things like that, imposter syndrome, comparison, I think is a huge red flag. And we have to learn how to read our own red flags because our subconscious is always waving it like, okay, we need more sleep is more important right now than that sales page. And maybe you can catch up on it later.
Mm.
But that I think is just something that comes with time. But if you really do want to, if you're building something from scratch and you're in that stretch season right now, then maybe it's only taking 10 minutes when baby goes down for a nap to take 10 minutes before you put your head down and just have a cup of coffee and take a deep breath and really just allow yourself to breathe. The world's not going to fall apart if you scroll Instagram for 10 minutes and you go to work.
Yeah, that is so real. So now taking that the other direction, we hear people a lot say in your business, and I actually think this applies to life too, is what is your needle moving task for the day? You hear this phrase all the time, do the needle moving task. Now, when I think about this in terms of life, for those that aren't in business, I think it's relatable, right? Do the dishes really need to be done today? Do you need to be hanging out with your kids or your partner? What is the needle moving task in your life versus your business? But how do you identify what those are? Like when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I have a sales page to build. I have emails to read. I have to build my lead magnet. I have to do the dishes, the laundry. I should hang out with my friends. Oh, I got to text that friend. Like, how do you decide what the needle moving task is for the day and where to put yourself in both aspects? I'd love if you gave us the business one first, because I know that's like your wheelhouse and your jam. But if you think about this personally too.
The answer is going to be different for everyone, but I can definitely say it's not creating an Instagram story or doing something because really when you look at it, and have you ever heard of Vanessa Lau?
Mm-mm.
She's big on YouTube and she actually took a year off of business. She's multi 7-figure business and she just burned out and she took a whole year off and she just came back and she said she figured out that she was just trying to keep up with the Instagram monster and
Yeah.
creating content that disappears in 24 hours. That's not really smart, right? When you think
Yeah.
about it. So I feel like there's this shift right now in the industry, and maybe you see it too, where people are turning away from the short form content and that hustle and grind to create nonstop, but it really disappears down the newsfeed. It disappears off the stories. And so you're almost just treading water nonstop. So there's a shift toward creating more long form legacy
Mhm.
content, like your podcast, like creating a really valuable YouTube channel. content that's searchable a year from now versus
Mm-hmm.
in today's moment. So to answer your question, where are you putting your efforts today that's actually going to still be relevant and helpful and add value and grow leads a year from now, 2 years from now?
So good. That's what makes it so tangible because I will tell you, like starting my business 2 years ago till now, you hear these phrases all the time and you're like, okay, but what does that mean? What does it mean to be needle moving? Because sometimes that instant gratification piece that we see on a personal professional level of, oh, I had likes, oh, this person saw my story, it feels needle moving because you're seeing the result immediately, but it's actually not the needle mover because the needle mover, you're probably not going to see the likes or the subscribes or anything when you're building it. You're going to see it down the road, but that's what's actually going to build your business. And I think it's the same thing in your life. There's this video, I don't know if you've seen it, and this professor takes this jar and he puts a bunch of sand in the jar, and then there's no room for the rocks left. And then he puts the rocks in first and you can add all the sand. And it's
Yes.
the same thing. It's okay, well, if you start with those big things, those big pillars that are so important to you, there's still going to be room to do the rest. But if you start with all those little things, there's not going to be any room. You're not going to be able to do it. And so would you say that's like the biggest mistake in new business owners that you're supporting? What are the big like red flags that you see that you're like, oh man, you just wasted a year and I hear you and I feel you and everyone's been there, but here's where you need to not do that again?
Yes, I see it all the time. If you feel like you're treading water and going nowhere, it's okay. It's so normal. And yeah, I would say don't frame it as wasted. Frame it as you're
Mm,
learning and you're taking the moment right now to be like, okay, if I keep doing what I'm doing today, can I realistically predict I'll be reaching my goals a year from now? Probably not if you're not making
mm,
traction. So I really do think it's a matter of taking a step back and saying, where am I putting my energy? Like actually track it during the day. Is it spending time serving existing clients versus 80% of your time should be actually getting new leads and new clients? I always tell my clients, like, you are a marketing agency that actually has an offer or a product. Like,
mm.
that's how the online space is. That does not mean, again, that you live on social media. I recommend not doing that. So, where is your long form legacy content being built? And if you don't have that yet, then start exploring what speaks to your soul. What excites you? Where could you really grow some roots?
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple of those because I think that whether you're in business or you're just, I remember when I started my business, I came across this account. I was like, how do they even make money? They just post on Instagram. And that was literally, I just didn't and I have a business degree. We run other businesses, but I did not understand like how you could turn this into an online success engine. And I think it's really important for the motherhood piece because it does give freedom and it does give flexibility that so many are craving and striving for. But there's so many times, I'm sure you hear it too, where it's like, well, I'm not good at tech or I don't like to, set these things up online or whatever. So what are all the different ways that you could grow an audience and you could be able to bring in leads?
Oh gosh, there's so many. It's such a
Some of your
gift.
favorites, maybe your top
Okay.
three.
I was gonna say it's such a gift that we live in the time that we do because there are these opportunities and a lot of them don't cost any or very little money. It's crazy. So if you love to write, I love to write. So I'm finishing my book will be here launching it in just I'm looking over my calendar in like a month or so.
So
So
exciting.
you could write a book. Creating a book funnel is very smart. And if you love to write, that's a great way to grow leads. Start a podcast. Doesn't cost a lot of money to just get the little equipment and set it up and fail forward and learn as you
Yeah.
go. YouTube video. Some people love video. If you like to consume video and your ideal client likes video, then that's where I would spend my time. And then if you don't want to create your own channel, then make it your full-time job getting guest spots on other people's podcasts. There's always a way. It's not a matter of resources, it's a matter of resourcefulness.
Yeah. I love that you also, the last one, especially bringing up is you can use other people's audiences and other people's platforms. And this is such a good thing for even if you don't have a business. We have a couple women in our community that are so passionate about sharing their story. And I know you started your business ventures blogging. And sometimes you don't even have to make money doing that. Like that doesn't have to be the goal. It can be. And you had a very successful business doing that. But if you just want to share your story or you want to have a hobby or a passion, like blogging, getting on other people's platforms, I think it is such a good opportunity. How did you get started blogging? How did you go from this single mom space to being profitable in the online space?
So blogging is kind of funny. As a school psychologist, I had the summers off, right? And I was so bored. I had no kids and no one to take care of. So I thought, I'm going to start a blog. And I had no business starting a style blog because, yeah, I didn't. But I decided to go for it. And I just started as a passion project for myself and posting. And back then, you had to create content 4 or 5 times a week. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And I started looking at other bloggers. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they're making money doing this. I wonder if I could do that. And it became this personal challenge. I posted consistently 4 or 5 times a week. That's 30 hours a week for a year and a half to probably 4 people. And one of them was my dad, like to no one. And it wasn't until, and I was really working hard trying to figure out how to crack the algorithm, how to figure this out. And it wasn't until I realized, hey, you can stop comparing yourself to everyone else and trying to say success leaves clues, just do what they're doing and actually create the blog that you would want to create. Be you. Yeah. And I started a series called Moments of the Week and Casual Friday, and it blew up. I grew to 250,000 page views a month. Going from 4 to that was a huge shift. And I got PR representation and grew. It was amazing. But people are like, oh my gosh, you got so successful. It's like, well, I did a year and a half. I put in the reps, like the time, and just didn't quit. And that's a lot of the online business space.
And were you a mom yet when you were doing that?
No, I was not a mom. That was 14 years ago. And so Cooper came about year 3 of the blog. Yeah.
And so you had already left your job at that point?
No.
So you were still working, building the blog, had Cooper. So when did the transition from employment to entrepreneurship happen? And what did that look like? And how did you make the decision? Because it can be really scary because you're like, is this going to sustain? Especially when you don't have another income or support. Yes. You're like, is this just like a right now thing or is this going to be a forever thing?
I am one of those people where it was not an easy decision for me to retire from school psychology because I was still paying student loans from graduate school. And it's that sunk cost. Like, oh my gosh, can I do this? I feel like I failed it. But I also, with having Cooper and the business, and then I started my second business and I thought, okay, the math makes sense. I still had to build up a nest egg because of my own fear. Health insurance, you're paying your own health insurance. There's all these factors to consider. And then this tiny human that I'm now in control. I'm not in control. And I just decided at some point it felt right. The fear was replaced with excitement. And I just decided that's what I was going to do. And I think a lot of times people glamorize. I didn't have a nanny or anything. They glamorize taking care of little people and building a business, boss mom. And it's great, but it's also, there is no balance to it. It's just embracing the imbalance and keeping perspective that the days are long, the years are short.
Yeah. I think I heard you say somewhere that it was almost easier being a single mom. And I hesitate to say that, but I heard you say it first. So I'm going to say it. That it was almost easier to be a single mom because you just had the 2 of you, right? And I've actually heard that before because on the caveat on the other side that we see is women that are like, my partner's not supportive, or how do I get my partner on board with what I want to do? And I'm navigating all these other people in my house. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit to, sure, it's challenging. It's all on you, but there's some hidden positives in there. And what would you tell a single mom that's in the place right now, or a mom that has an unsupportive partner that feels like she's going to be on her own to be able to go after her goals and dreams?
Oh man, I just want to hug. If that's you, I just want to hug you because it was easier for me to be single with my son, because when you do have maybe an unsupportive or someone that's actually not a healthy relationship, then it can feel like you're moving mountains just to show up for your business, to show up as mom, to show, and then when throw social media into the mix, you feel like a fraud because you're trying to be positive and empowering, but you have this drain that's in your proximity all the time. So when I was a single mom, I loved that season of my life so much because I figured out my worth finally for the first time in my life. And I didn't need or want, I didn't want anyone. I didn't want a relationship, to be honest. This is great. I have my little man, my business, and I'm hustling. I have no sleep, but I'm living on caffeine and Pinot Noir, and it's going to work out. And then, of course, it wasn't until I have my soulmate now. I don't say soulmate lightly. It's truly, he is my soulmate. And I was like, okay, I wasn't going to go to the relationship, but I have no choice with you. And he's the most supportive. And to have that difference, it's just night and day.
So there's this saying in business that it's not actually about what you have to do in your business to get the result, so you have to become to receive the result.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that this could be super present when it comes to finding your soulmate and your partner, or finding a friend. When we're in this state, in this place of, am I the person to receive what I'm looking for? It's really anything. It's the money, it's the business, it's the partnership, it's the friend. So if you're in a place where you're not feeling worthy, and maybe you're not even aware, because I think that from my own experience in the women in our community, I don't think that most people are sitting home and they're like, I'm horrible, I'm unworthy, I'm all these things. I think that can happen, but that is not the majority. It's this little sneaky conversation that you have in your head that you haven't brought up, that you haven't worked through. And you think you're like, oh no, like I'm going to pursue that goal. I'm worthy of that. Or, oh, I'd love to meet someone. I'm worthy of that. But you're telling yourself all these sneaky things behind the scenes that are blocking that ability for you to grow your business, find the partner, find the friend. So how do you, one, become aware of all those sneaky things? And two, how do you then become the person to receive what you want, whether it's in your business or life?
I love this. So maybe you've heard of the be, do, have.
Yeah.
It's who you are being that drives the doing that gets you the results that you want. The majority, I would say 99% of the population works from the do and have be. Like basically it's all the actions and the pushing through and forcing it to happen and do. Instagram stories, reels, omnipresent. And that can feel draining. You need to be the woman that would naturally attract the results that you want. And that's about energy. And we just talked about it. Sometimes you have energy drains in your life. I mean, kids take a lot of energy, rightfully so. Yeah. Other circumstances in your life, if you're going through a rough season with your career or your family, it pulls energy from you, and it's harder to show up as that being that would attract the results that you want. But the quickest way to know where you are is honestly just to look around you and look at your quality of your relationships, your bank account, your clients coming in. Are you attracting the clients that you really truly want to work with? The clients you have right now are the clients that your business is designed to attract. Mm-hmm. So if you want a different type of woman to work with, then you just have to look at your language and who you're speaking to.
Yeah. And I'll give a tangible example in my own business is when we started Mama House Goals, we were looking to grow the community. And so we were like, moms, all moms everywhere, come. And unapologetically now we talk about we're not the community for every woman and every mom. And we say, if you're not looking for a resource, if you're not looking for a solution, if you don't want help for wherever you're at in your season, probably not the right place for you. We all can have a hard day and we can vent, but we can't stay there. And if you want to stay there, then we're probably not the right space because we're going to tell you, hey, these people can support you. There's these resources. This is how we get out of that. These women have been here too. And sometimes I had to learn the hard way. Not everyone wants out. And that's when you're bringing in clients or you're bringing in friends or you're bringing in whoever you're attracting to your life, you have to decide, okay, what type of people do you want to attract? It's hard to not take everyone in and to say, nope, I'm not going to take that client, or I'm not going to be friends with that person, or I'm not going to be building a relationship with that person because I want to set some boundaries. I'm sure you've been in that state professionally and probably even personally. And I'd love for you to give us some feedback twofold. One, as you as a human, how do you set those boundaries even when it feels really hard? Or when money's looking at you and you're like, ooh, I'm going to turn this client away because it's not a good fit, but that means I'm saying no to dollars too. Question one there. And question two, how do you teach this to your son to not be friends with everybody?
Yes. I love it. Okay. So the first one, I have to acknowledge that if you are early in your business or you're going through a rough patch and you do need the financial injection, sometimes it's okay. You're not a failure if you do accept a client that maybe isn't a perfect dream rainbows and unicorns and tequila fit, right? It's okay. I think then it's a good boundary to have where you can say, this is probably for your social media or your podcast, is to be like, I work with women who take extreme ownership. You are ambitious. You're an action taker. It's never been about the hard work. Talk that kind of language to attract the person. Sometimes, especially in the business space, I bet you see this, where we talk about the comparison or feeling slow or, oh my gosh, the economy right now, and all these things that are reasonable and valid excuses, but they can be convenient for some people who really are looking for ways to, it's scary to grow big sometimes. And so it's easier sometimes to stay small.
Yeah. I love that you bring that up because there is the realness of paying for the bills of your life and business, right? So sometimes maybe you are taking a client that isn't super aligned so that you can bring in the income that you needed, but being aware of it, right? And being like, okay, next time, here's how we're going to reevaluate. Here's the boundaries we're going to set. And then the clear point that you just said is making sure you're messaging that so that you are calling in the right people. So whether it is on your social media platform or wherever else. Now, before we get to how you do this as a parent, because I am really curious, I do have an additional question. Now, when it comes to friends, entrepreneur friends, mom
Yes.
friends, parent friends, how do you find your right people so that you're not attracting these people that are draining you, that they are adding to your life? Because you're not going to be messaging on social media like, hey, I'm looking for friends that aren't high maintenance. Like, I'm looking for these people. You have to figure out these boundaries. Is there a way, and especially being a business owner, I'm sure not all your friends are. So you're not sitting there being like, okay, I'm only going to talk to people that have this in common with me. Are there different conversation points, ways that you navigate mommy play dates that you're like, okay, this person is or isn't for me?
Yes, I have. And maybe this is, again, because I'm older, that I have firm boundaries. I don't have friends that complain about their spouses or partners, that complain about being a mom. I look for women who are working from a place of gratitude and positivity, and they're holding their giant venti coffee and they're joking about how they didn't get sleep last night and they're laughing about it because it's just life, but they're not complaining about it. There was this mom at the playground in our neighborhood actually earlier this week, and I just loved her energy. And we were talking, and I was just like, I really like you. I wanted to say that to her, but again, like adult relationships, it's weird. But you're like,
isn't it funny though that we're all behind the scenes like, oh, I don't want to come off weird, but I like you. And it's like, we're literally all saying that. So what if we just said it, you know?
I really like you. Do you want to hang out today? But we did say we should meet up together sometimes, so exchange like numbers to text. And I was so excited. So those are the flags I look for, is just, yeah, coming from humor, gratitude, and not complaining, because I take responsibility for the energy I bring into a room, and I want the same for people that come into the room.
Yeah. And I think what's really important about what you said is it doesn't mean that you wake up and you're like, I have so much energy. I slept so well last night. Life is awesome. Being a positive person myself, I think it's important to find that distinction, right? It's very okay to be like, I am tired. Yes, my kid didn't sleep well last night. That's not the complaining, right?
No,
that's acknowledging the facts of what's happening in your life. But complaining is when, I can't even think of a good example right now, but we know the difference. We can feel it when it's like, the person's just like, oh my God, could you believe they didn't even sleep? They never sleep. These kids, I just can't even, I don't know what to do with them. That there's a different energy, right? Rather than saying, yeah, I'm running on a little bit of sleep. I'm tired. Those are all fair things to say, but it just comes from a different space.
Yes, it's not in denial. Like motherhood is hard, and it is hard sometimes. And you are working, like sometimes your tank is empty. It's okay to have a cry and be like, this is hard sometimes.
And let's say a mom's listening and she's like, man, I think I'm the complainer. What if she's seeing herself in that? How do you go from feeling like a complainer to acknowledging the hard and just coming at it with a different energy and narrative?
I've complained, absolutely, in my life. I think you also got to have that friend where you can just say, okay, I need a vent for just a hot second. And you can just get it out and then be like, okay, I am better. I'm good. Thanks for listening. The quality of your thoughts determine the quality of your life. And so you take responsibility for those thoughts. And if you can just say, I just need to vent versus this is my life right now and I hate my life kind of a thing, then you might need to go talk to someone. But I think having good girlfriends around that get it And if you are a business owner, I recommend finding at least one, get yourself in a room with other moms who are business owners who understand the situation, like the reality, because it's unique. And
Yeah. So shameless plug for our community calls for Mama House
yeah.
Goals, because you can find both. On the parenting aspect, 11 years old to me, not having an 11-year-old yet, feels like a pretty pivotal age. How are some of the ways you're navigating some of these like cultural conversations in the sense of we don't complain, we take ownership for our thoughts, we find friends that lift us up, don't bring us down, all those same things that we're talking about. But I can think back to when I was 11, I think a lot of the times we want to just have friends. We want to be liked. We're trying to figure out who we are. But especially at 11, around that age, I can imagine that's like a very pivotal point. Do you feel like you're in that season? And if you are, or you're preparing for it, what are some of the things you're being like really aware of and trying to like instill?
Oh man. Yes. Unfortunately, my poor son, like I still have the school psychologist in me, but absolutely this age is just, it's such a fun age, but they're in this in between stage of being a little kid and being this teenager. And I am seeing that people pleasing piece where he
Mm.
just wants to be accepted. And sometimes he'll tell me stories and I'm like, oh, I don't even like that kid. I don't want you to be friends with that kid at all. And this is actually a situation we just had recently where he was so bummed because something bad happened on the playground and he came in the classroom and he wrote on his little note about how he doesn't like himself, like on his paper. And his teacher told me later and we talked about it at home and he was just having a hard moment. And so as a parent, our job isn't to tell them how to think. We help them, teach them what questions to ask themselves. How would you handle this? What advice would you give me? And I don't know. I think we discount kids a lot. They have a lot of really good thoughts. And he's like, I'm just having a hard moment, Mom. I think I just need to figure out how to not go to like hate myself from, this kid was mean to me. And
Yeah.
so just having the conversation.
Yeah. I'm just like admiring even just the way you said that, because I think, especially when you're in this business space and when you're an ambitious mom with goals or you're working on yourself, you're in this self development space, it is hard for us to not teach in those moments and to say, here's how you can think about it, here's how you can handle it. So I'm really impressed that you're able to sit there and just guide and not say, okay, here are some things you could do next time, or here's how you could, and maybe it's followed with that. But the initial thought of what you said is we're asking them the questions so that they can bring that up. So, other than being a school psychologist and having that background, how can the typical mom learn to guide some of those conversations? Because one of the biggest things that I think is a challenge in motherhood is we're so often mothering ourselves. Whether we had a good mom or not, it's more about the fact that we're an evolving and growing human all the time and things are going to be coming up. And so we have things that come back up from our childhood when we're parenting, or new things that we're navigating that we're subconsciously putting on our kids. So what are some ways that we can prepare our own minds, bodies, and souls to be a good parent and to be able to ask the right questions?
If I could take one thing away from graduate school, 4.5 years of student loan debt would be to always like kids don't like to be talked at. Adults, we
Mm,
don't like to be talked at. If someone's
yeah.
telling me, I don't like to be told what to do. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't like to be told. We want to figure it out our hard way. But kids, they shut down when we start
Yeah.
talking at them and lecturing them. And the easiest way to get kiddos to open up is to say, first off, you're not in trouble. I want to know what you think about this and talk to me about what kind of thoughts were you going through your head. Get them to open up in a safe place that is free from judgment or anger and come from a caring place. Kids are ultimately just trying to do the best they can in the
Mhm.
moment, just like adults. And oftentimes,
Yeah.
what can be perceived as naughty behavior or bad behavior, which it might be, but it could also just be a call for help or a call for action for something else. And oftentimes, because parents are busy and we have other stuff going on, we can sweep it under the rug, which kids are very quick to package and label as indifference. And so that's why expectations are really important, because they have to know that we care about how they show up.
Yeah.
Because if no one else cares that they have the expectation that they show up a certain way, that they sit up a certain way in restaurants and they look people in the eye when they talk to them, when we teach them these skills, it changes how they show up in the world.
Yeah. Gosh, that's like a light bulb moment for me, is just thinking of expectations in that way of, hey, someone cares about me. And I think about it from a self standpoint. That's why it's okay to put expectations on yourself in that way too. Like realistic, kind expectations to be like, hey, you care about yourself. So whether it's a good health workout session or just like sitting quiet for 5 minutes or wanting to pursue a business or read, or like you said, it doesn't even have to be a self-development book, or it could be 50 Shades of Grey or whatever it is you
I
want to
don't know
read.
where that came from.
Like, but you're showing up for yourself and you have that expectation of caring for yourself. And we know that when we model certain behavior, our kids follow that. And so the expectation of one, hey, I have this expectation for you, child, to show up this way, but also these are expectations we hold for ourselves so that then they can start holding their own expectations for themselves. They're letting themselves down and they're learning how to navigate through that when they're not hitting that expectation. But I think they have to do that. We don't want them to be sad. We don't want them to be physically hurt. We want them to be able to have the right mindset and choices in situations that they're not ending up in places that they're physically or emotionally hurt. But whether it's in business or life, we have to go through things to get through them and to grow and to learn, right? And when we fail in life, in business, we learn. And I know that you teach this to your clients, and I know that you see this all the time. Where do you feel like we can encourage people to fail more? Like, how can someone say, I'm okay with failure. I'm going to take on this. My expectation is to challenge myself. My expectation is for this. And if I fail, it's not failure, right? It's I've stumbled and I'm getting back up. And how do you see the relationship with this? Let's talk about business first, of just like sometimes people set this expectation of I'm going to hit 6 figures in a year. I'm going to replace my income. I'm going to do this. And it's like, that's great. And what if you don't, but you still learned and now you're set up for the next year? Like, how do you get over maybe your initial goal if you fail at it, but you're actually succeeding? You're just not there yet.
I love this because I think in the online space, people, if you don't have a big, loud, audacious, big goal, then you're not playing big enough. But what I would say, we should choose an external goal like 6 figures. Let's just say that. If your goal is ultimately, I really want to make 6 figures in my business. Okay, cool. That is just telling you what game you are about to play. And so again, we go back to the be, do, have. Who is the person that you need to be in order to achieve that goal realistically? Not pie high in the sky. It's realistically, that would be a realistic outcome. How do you need to show up? Are you hitting the snooze button? Are you doing any kind of outdoor walks or workouts or some sort of self-care there? How are you eating? It's just about habits and how you show up.
Yeah.
How do you walk into a room? Are your shoulders back and your chin is up and you're looking people in the eye again? Or are you slumped? How are you dressing? It just means you have to show up in a way as the woman who would have a 6-figure business. You create energy. It doesn't come to you. You have to generate it. And that starts with a choice. And so again, the goal is like the 6 figures is the goal, but it really always comes down to who are you being as you pursue that goal.
Yeah. And the first thing that comes to my mind, let's say you fall short. Let's say you make 10,000 and you don't even get near your 100,000. If you were being the person to create that 100,000, like you ended up with all these other benefits along the way.
Yes.
These other things that like, it's sure, maybe you didn't hit that goal, but you hit all these other goals. You hit all these other things that were fulfilling you and lighting you up. They're like these hidden milestones along the way that are a little less hidden. Like you should be aware of what you're doing. But I think that so often we get focused on just that big thing when really we know it's about the journey. It's not just the destination. And it's how are we setting ourselves up for success? And I think in the same thing with motherhood, right? Okay, how do we be the mom that is going to create the little human that we desire to have for them, not for us, but for them to live a life that they feel good about? And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have days that maybe we yell, which I equate to the Jack in the Box stop, right? Like go to Jack in the Box. Like that's fine if you want to go to Jack in the Box. But if you go every day, your body's not going to feel good, right? If you're losing your cool every day with your kids, you got to fix something. You got to find an adjustment because it's not good for either of you. It might happen, but it doesn't mean it's going to feel good. But it doesn't mean that you can't do that sometimes. It doesn't mean the family can't check out occasionally and not be talking and all go doing their own things. that's okay. But if we're creating habits that don't get the result that we're looking for, we need to create habits that get the result we are looking for, right? What are some things that you do on a daily basis, weekly basis to help nurture who you want to be in this season? What are some things that you really prioritize as like non-negotiables?
My non-negotiable, it's very small, but I go for a walk every day, except not today. I was just, before we started to hit record, I'm in Denver and we just got 2 feet of snow. So I will not be going on my walk today, but typically it's to go outside and go for a walk, even if it's just around the block. That was my vision of success, would be when I would be driving to work and I would see women out walking. And I remember thinking, what do they do? Like, how is it that it's Tuesday, 8 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning, and they're out walking? Don't they have a job to go to? And I thought that would be amazing if I had the freedom one day to just go for a walk on a Tuesday just because I want to. So that's my non-negotiable. And other times it's honestly just putting my phone down and actually deleting my social apps on the weekends and my Voxer and my coaching stuff on the weekends and just being present and watching reruns of Project Runway and hanging out with my kids and just doing things without judgment, because that's just bullying yourself. And I've been there and yeah. So anyway, that's what I do.
Yeah. Don't be there.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So one of the questions that I have for you is, we're talking about failure a minute ago, but let's talk about success now, because there's often this hidden fear of success. It's actually not a hidden fear of failure. It's, if I hit this success, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm not going to be a present mom? Does that mean I'm not getting along with my partner, or this or that, or what's going to happen? Or can I hold it? Can I make it all work? So I want to talk a little bit about, one, how do you overcome the fear of success or understand if you're even there? And then two, how do you stop and identify when you've hit success, and when you're this ambitious person, not be in this hamster wheel of just always going for more, being able to like be happy with what you have?
Oh man. The first one is the fear of success. Yes. Most ambitious women, which I know that's your audience, is ambitious women. It's more about the fear of success. And I would say just aim to fail more. And fail, I know it just sounds like it's kind of a hard word, but it's making you ultimately those kind of failures, or when someone you do a launch and you don't hit your goal, or you created a lead magnet and no one but your good friend downloaded it. It can feel like all the air just left your balloon, but really it's making you into who you need to be, and fail more, lose more, struggle more, because that's making you into the woman that can handle the success when it comes your way. Because just because you make 6 figures, multi-6 figures, it doesn't mean that you don't have any problems or you have no failures. Yeah. You actually have bigger failures. You have payroll. You have, if you decide to build a team, you lose thousands of dollars on Facebook ads. You have bigger issues that can be a gut punch that will knock you down.
I'm just looking at you as a perfect example. You've built these successful businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you know when to just sit, or when to be like, yeah, let's do another launch. Let's bring on a teammate. Let's go and do that thing. Yes. How do you make that call?
I feel, again, it's all about concern. It's not really ever about time management. It's about energy management, especially as a mom. And to know, okay, if you have hit success, you have the clients coming in, it's a well-oiled machine and you feel really good. Sometimes it's hard to like settle down that do more muscle. And I struggle with it all the time. If I could work 24/7, I would absolutely do it. It's still it's like a illness or something. I don't know. I don't know if you'd know when. I will say I'm seeing this shift in the industry also. It's another one that I'm seeing where people are downsizing, where I have clients that have had really pretty big teams and they let go of their employees. Now they might have a few contract workers, but they just don't want the pressure. And they want to streamline things and create more passive income streams. And because it's not really about the money, it's about the freedom for a lot of people when it comes to success. It's not measured in dollars, it's measured in, can they head off to 2 weeks or a month in Europe and not have their whole business fall apart?
Yeah. Comes back to the why. Because so often we start from a place of money or need. You said desperation or inspiration. And then we also maybe want to make an impact. And it's usually twofold. But then it's when you get to that place where you're like, okay, I've done both. Now, which one am I holding on to? Am I holding on to creating more money, or am I saying, okay, I've made a big enough impact and I've created the freedom I desired. So now how am I going to just let that be life and let that be okay?
I think you made a good point there, though, too. It's also women are naturally drawn to evolve and to pivot. So sometimes if we found, quote, success in a path, it's okay if you have a nudge to explore something that's related to it or something that's a little bit different and maybe that's like the serial entrepreneur in me where I'm like, okay, we can do business over here. It's okay to stay open to possibilities and growth opportunities along your path, because it could be just that kind of windy road that brings you to that next thing.
Important to just remember we're all on this journey of life, this road of life. Before I get to my last couple questions, where can everyone find you? Where can they tap into your world? I know you have a really amazing download that you offer to people for anyone that's interested in business or curious where to get started. I'd love for you to talk about your lead magnet freebie that people can download, because I think that is huge value to get the right leads in and really create that success.
Oh, thanks, Kelsey. Yeah, no, my passion is helping women not like my business is called Small Audience, Big Income, because you do not need to have a huge audience in order to convert a very large, sizable income. So again, it's about the epitome of working smarter, not harder. We'll link to it below. It's the 127 high converting lead magnets. And then I also have a cheat sheet that comes with it that's organized by niche and industry. But you guys can connect with me. I'd love to connect with you over on Instagram. I'm at Small Audience, Big Income. And I have my podcast is the same name.
Amazing. And definitely go check out your podcast. I know you just released an episode recently about growing babies and businesses. And so obviously we feel that over here on the Mama Has Goals community. So go check that out. What is something that you're really excited about right now? A goal that you currently have? You have your 1-year-old daughter that came from expanding your family with your new soulmate, doing IVF and all the things to bring her into the world. But then she came, which is amazing. We're going to have you come back for that story another day. But I would love for you to talk about what, now that you're here with Sophia and Cooper, what is on your heart personally, professionally? What are you looking forward to this year? I mean, your book, that's a big thing. But outside of your book, what are some other things?
That was my answer.
I want to challenge you. You got to come up with something a little more. Okay, first, tell us a little bit about the book, because when we release this, everyone should be able to grab it really soon.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the book and then give me one more.
The big one is the book. It's Small Audience, Big Income. It's a blueprint for growing a leads on tap business with a not so big audience. So that's one. My husband, we just launched an Airbnb here in Colorado. So that's only 2 months old. And that's something that we're in the thick of right now, which we absolutely love. And then summer, this summer, we're going back to Oregon for a month. We go to Sun River Resort. That's where I'm from, is Oregon. So
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about so many good things today, but if someone listening were to take action immediately, they were going to get off this podcast and they were going to take action, I'd love for you to give us 2. One for the business owner that really needs to move the needle in their business. You've created success in a sustainable way for 3 businesses, for many, many clients. A lot of it comes back to lead generation. But what is the one step that they could take today in their business? And from a personal standpoint, if someone is trying to figure out what's next for them, what's the one thing that they could do?
Okay, so for your business, and I would say actually for your life in general, this actually applies to both, is to ask yourself, what is it that I want? To actually journal on it, maybe write it down and think about what is it I want? And maybe put blockers on so that you're not taking someone else's goals or someone else's idea of success and making that be like, that's my idea too. And then ask yourself, what's no longer working? What's no longer working for me? Maybe it could be as simple as too much wine in the middle of the week, or it's not getting outside, or for me, it was like only reading personal development books. That's no longer giving me joy. So ask yourself what's no longer working and what needs to change and what will happen if I do make this change. And then most powerfully is what will happen if I don't?
Well, I think that covers everybody there. And so we'll have to definitely write those down. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Such good conversation. And I truly can't wait to have you come back and tell us all the other parts of your journey.
Thank you so much, Kelsey.
You, your story, and what you have to offer this world fills me up. I want to meet you. Join me on Instagram at This is Kelsey Smith, and let's create a ripple effect for mamas with goals. Together is better.